Ladies and gentlemen, after 2 years, we've finally done it. After 2 years, we've gotten the privilege of speaking to Axie Infinity's co-founder, Jihoz. There's a lot of great information here, so feel free to go ahead, stay tuned, and let's get into it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we've got the one and only co-founder of Axie Infinity and growth lead, Jihoz, with us here today. And this is something long time coming. I've literally been like the guy that founded his roots through Axie Infinity, so I feel like we're going to have a lot of interesting stuff here. But Jihoz, tell me here, this is the big thing everybody wants to know. How the heck did Axie Infinity end up becoming the thing that it is today? How did you, as, you know, the supple person that's just decided to be a part of the universe, decided to get into the cryptocurrency industry and decide to get into Axie Infinity?
Well, you know, I actually found Axie as a community member. And when I found it, I thought, hey, this is something that has the potential to introduce Web3 and crypto, which, you know, until that point had been so boring, right? Bitcoin, Ethereum, to be honest, it's for nerds, right? Like, and only nerds were able to earn crypto. Like setting up a Bitcoin miner, dude, no, like everyday people, they don't know how to do that. So to me, it always made sense, like that crypto would go mainstream when normal people could mine crypto. And it wasn't just something that, you know, people who knew how to program or run Bitcoin miners could do, right? Because like, so I actually believed in Bitcoin and crypto since 2012, 2013. And my friends actually tried to get me to drop out of school to join one of the first crypto funds.
No way.
I think they actually ended up losing all the money in Mt. Gox or something like that. So I kind of dodged the bullet. Dude, people who are too early to crypto got wrecked. They got devastated because it was actually much harder back then. Anyway, so I always thought, hey, Bitcoin makes sense, right? Like I was a big gold bug as a child. I actually collected gold and speculated on gold when I was like a kid and a teenager. You know, I worked on the Ron Paul campaign in 2008.
Really?
So, you know, I was always kind of like, you know, fiat currency is very flawed and there's going to be a reset. There's going to be a new monetary order. But I didn't want to buy Bitcoin because it didn't seem fair to me that someone else could mine Bitcoin and I had to buy it from them. It seemed like I was at a disadvantage. So yeah, when I found Axie, I was like, hey, this is something that I think could introduce Web3 and crypto. We didn't call it Web3 back then. Could introduce crypto to everyday people. It's like Pokemon. It's like Tamagotchi. It's nostalgic. And, you know, I grew up as a gamer, as a collector. So NFTs, right? It kind of stimulated both the gaming and the collecting side of my brain. And I found that interesting. So yeah, you know, I got involved through CryptoKitties initially. I was actually one of the top CryptoKitties breeders. You know, met a lot of interesting people, Alexander, Psychout, Trung, you know, being two of those people, right? And yeah, you know, that kind of later helped out when I found the Axie community.
Yeah, so for me, the big thing for you, and a big reason I even ended up getting into Axie Infinity is because I feel like your story kind of correlates to a lot of us that maybe were trying to get away from that 9-to-5 life where we'd be stressed out doing something we might not be fulfilled in long term, right? Like we just hate our lives for the most part. So we're like, we need to change. We need to do this now. We do a big sacrifice. And let me tell you, you did an interesting one because Axie Infinity, great rebrand here, by the way. You're going to call yourself Kitty Battles. You killed it with that rebrand. The risk of rebranding and the risk of doing something in a brand new space is absolutely absurd to most people. Nobody would take that risk. But when I actually looked into your story a little bit more, I looked at a couple past interviews and I really like delved deep into the risk that you really took moving to Vietnam and you know, kind of just leaving your roots and risking everything to kind of get to where you are today. What convinced you to do that? What convinced you to do such a giant leap where you just left everything you were doing and all of the prospects? Because, I mean, you were in Yale, right? You got a BA in history from Yale. So what made you decide, screw this, I'm out of here, and I'm going to try this crypto thing?
Well, yeah, you know, I was stuck in, so after I graduated from Yale, I was doing two things. I was running a small hedge fund with my friends, but I was also working as a recruiter. The hedge fund wasn't large enough for us to live off of that.
Right.
But I actually, to be honest, I hated recruiting. Like, it's kind of like, right, like what you said, like sometimes we have these kind of quote unquote normal jobs Yeah, we're just like, we need something better. And, you know, I always felt like I should be an entrepreneur. I was always interested in entrepreneurship, but it always felt like everything had been invented. Right? Like for our generation, right, it's like, you know, by the time we graduated college around 2015, right, it's like Facebook, Instagram, whatever, all these different Web 2 applications had already been established. And what were the things that were coming out? It's like, I don't know, Uber Eats, right? Like delivery, right?
A lot of mobile stuff.
Food delivery, or scooters, right? All my friends were starting scooter companies. And I was like, okay, wow, that's really, being an entrepreneur right now, it's like, to create something new, it just didn't seem tenable. And I think on the other side of the end of the spectrum was like super, super intense stuff like SpaceX and Tesla. But so when I found Web3, I was like, hey, this is a new space. And it seems like, you know, it could correlate to my career, right? Because when you think about like the founders of Microsoft and Apple, you know, part of it was timing, right? Like they happened to be entering the prime of their careers, just as, for example, personal computers or the internet were taking off, right? So it felt like for me, blockchain was the thing that was starting to take off during the prime of my career. And yeah, you know, but you know, so I knew that, but it wasn't until I found NFTs that I was like, hey, I have some unique thing to bring to the table here, right? Because, you know, I grew up collecting insects and fossils, playing games. So.
And I think it's interesting that you're talking about like unique prospects, because a lot of people in, you know, the Web3 gaming niche and just in gaming in general, they'll kind of go after you and say, why are you doing something unique? Why don't you just do something everybody else has already done with a proven track record and then just monetize it and run away? Why try to actually innovate in the space when the risk is just so high for what little return you may actually get for the most part in 99% of situations? So for me, it's always been like, the fact that CryptoKitties came out, and even like, I actually have this here pulled up. This is from July 8th, 2018. And you made this post on the top 5 games in terms of users in the cryptocurrency space. And you see number 1 is like Ethereum on. I don't even know what that is, with like 127 users and like 1.
That was the original Axie hating thing. It was they were talking shit about us. They were saying that they were going to dominate us. You know, this has happened many times. And yeah, and nobody's ever heard of them, right? Like, yeah, fuck you, Ethereum. We destroyed it.
Get shit on. But yeah, CryptoKitties absolutely killing with 20 ETH worth of volume. I think even to this day, like if you go to Axie Infinity, how much volume are you guys pulling in? It's what, like 20, 40 ETH or something like that?
I think like, you know, around 30 ETH per day. I think like 1,000 ETH in the last month or so.
You're still dumping on them, even if it's 19 ETH. It's all right. Listen, it's a bear market. It's down bad mode. Oh, and you're probably wondering, okay, why am I wearing a suit to an interview? I should probably just be wearing a shirt in. Here's the reason. No, I actually don't always wear it. It's because when I first started my YouTube channel back in like August, September, I used to wear this cringe little suit. Let me tell you a little bit of history about this suit, because this first off is like $100 suit off Amazon. It's like some cheap thing. And I used to wear just random shirts with it. And I used to live with my parents, because I remember I saw in your interviews, it talked about the fact that, you know, you lived in like your mom's basement at some point. I was doing the same thing. I mean, I feel like a lot of people that end up taking that leap into blockchain, like I had decided, you know what, I'm not even going to move out. I'm not even going to try to invest into other things. I'm going to throw everything I have into this. And a big reason I ended up getting into cryptocurrency was Axie Infinity, because I'd been a big gamer all my life. You know, I got into Arcade, a bunch of these different things. And, you know, my brother had introduced me to cryptocurrency in like March of 2021. I remember the whole Mark Cuban thing with the Ronin network launching and that Ronin wallet. No, it wasn't the Ronin network. It was just the Ronin wallet. No Ronin network until like October, November. But anyway, what had happened is he pretty much got super drunk one day. He was like super big alcoholic, lost his entire life savings off cryptocurrency. It was like 5 figures. And so for his birthday in June, this is like the wildest thing in the world, I gave him $700, right? It was $700 in Axies, right? And that ended up turning into like 5 figures. It was like the most absurd thing in the world. So I find a lot of the time, taking those risks and, trying to actually learn to innovate is all it is at the end of the day. Trying to like find something while it's still fresh, while, people aren't really looking at it. For example, right now, it's a bear market. It's been hard. I mean, I think even for you, despite all this prior success you've had, it's probably still been tough trying to micromanage all the different things that end up coming in your way. For example, maybe tell me a little bit about that $600 million hack that, everybody and their mother was talking about last year in like January, February. How did you get through that? Because that's like something that kills 99% of blockchain companies. How'd you get through this and how'd you get back stronger?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that was a hard time.
Yeah.
And but while it was happening, right, there was a sense that, hey, this is something that could define our legacy. This is something that could be very inspirational to people. This is something that could be a Super Saiyan moment, right? Like where you go to the brink of death and you come back. A Saiyan gets stronger the more times they're driven to the brink of death and come back. And yeah, I was like, okay, what is the Senzu bean? How do we get the Senzu bean? And it's just figuring out like, right, there is an optimal next strategy. Obviously crying and freaking out is not part of that optimal strategy. And so, in that moment, it's just like, okay, let's give it everything we have, because when we're 50, and if this did end up, being the thing that really, ended the journey, right, we're going to look back at this moment and hope that we gave it our all, and we wouldn't be able to live with ourselves if we didn't give it our all. And, the great thing was that we have an amazing community. We have a great team. We're resilient. We're able to, put together a sequence of events that allowed us to restore the network and back all the funds on Ronin. And here we are. We're still here. We're still grinding. And I think that was a huge learning experience, and, something that grew the community emotionally and mentally, and also the team. Of course, it was hard to go through.
It's maturity, right? And I feel like some blockchain gaming companies are kind of going through the same thing. For example, the cryptocurrency company I cover the most these days is like Gala. And for you guys, you've got your little thing going on and whatever. But, what would you say to everybody in the Gala community and, everybody that, just didn't foresee, possible huge black swan catalyst to come out that, oh my God, everybody needs to freak out. What do you think the Gala community should do from here? And what would you say management over at Gala is probably thinking right now in terms of managing this crisis situation?
I really don't want to speak for other people. I would say for the Gala community, if you're playing games and enjoying games and you believe in the vision and believe in Web3 gaming, I think, obviously we're doing cool stuff over at Ronin. So definitely, encourage you to check out what's happening. But, I think in a crisis though, it's like, okay, right. Like, let's just focus on facts and try to remove emotion from the picture. Emotion can make you do dangerous things. Emotion can be very dangerous, but we live in an emotional society. But yeah, sometimes it's like, okay, what data can I look at? What facts can I look at? And can I do the best thing for myself right now? What are the next moves? Not taking into account the past, right? Those are sunk costs, right? Like sunk cost fallacy is like being emotionally attached to a certain course of action, based on what you've done up until that point. So
yeah, I think that for a lot of us, when we were really early in the Axie community, well, it's funny because we say early, but not really early. You guys were like from 2018, but like quote unquote early. We had this perception of like, I feel like a lot of what we thought was right wasn't actually right, because a lot of it was emotional. A lot of it was like, oh, the SLP price went down. So, while we may be giving advice or we might be giving some pinpoints on what we might think is right, in all reality, we're just butthurt over the SLP price going down and people, just being frustrated over it, which is fair, right? It just makes sense. That's just investment mentality. Like when maturity isn't there, that's just kind of how markets are, especially in the hype mentality. I think Axie Infinity has actually done a really good job. I made a video a couple months ago about like Axie Infinity and how, is Axie Infinity actually like dead? And I feel like out of all blockchain companies, Axie Infinity is probably the strongest ecosystem in terms of like the Ronin network with all the things you've been bringing out there. And I know a big mentor kind of for the ecosystem has been like Coco Bear. I've never actually met Coco Bear, but tell me, how did Coco Bear Genkai end up becoming a reality? Because I feel like for me, CyberKongs has always had kind of a place in the Axie community, but we've never actually seen it activated on chain until very recently.
I mean, Coco, right? So what is the story of Coco Bear? People are interested these days because, right, we had the CyberKong's migration and mint on Ronin, which went really well. And then recently he's been, right, giving out a lot of mystics and origin Axies, and kind of welcoming more collectors into his circle, I guess I would say. And so Coco is actually the main whale from the beginning of Axie, right? He bought around half or more of the origin Axies during that original Axie mint. So, you know, he was a very important community member, and he owns the most mystics, the most origins. And, you know, one thing that I think is really amazing and has helped Axie out a lot, and even Ronin, Axie and Ronin, is that, you know, although he's, you know, he has the potential to be so influential, and he is so influential, he's also like very level-headed and data-driven and long-term thinking. He's not, you know, I think one of the things that you see with certain projects is you have whales that believe that the founders, or right, that the project exists to serve them. Whereas Coco believes more in, right, a form of like servant leadership, right, where he's thinking about what he can do on a day-to-day basis to help the project move forward and to grow. And he isn't like, I don't know, he doesn't basically have the sense of entitlement, which sometimes you see from big whales.
And that's incredible. I mean, like, whales always just dump on projects and murder them and don't actually try to build much for the most part. But some whales are very constructive. They do a lot for ecosystems. You guys lucked out on Coco Bear. Like, I always look forward to looking at Coco Bear and what he does, because that guy kills it. Every time he gets into a project, everybody's looking at him. So I'm really happy he's over at Axie Infinity still, and I'm glad he's like absolutely killing it. I saw he was selling a bunch of Axies at what, like 3 ETH or something like that. And I was like, this guy's just like giving them away practically. I even thought about getting one myself. So like it's just killer to see Coco Bear still this active to this day. I think he
sold around 12 mystics over the last couple of days, and I think around 8 to 10 of them went to net new mystic Axie holders, right?
Yeah.
And so it's important to, right, like it's important for him to distribute the ownership of the mystics to the right people at the right time, right? And it's kind of like right now, the people who are willing to put down 3 ETH for a mystic Axie, you know, a very good price, but also at a very dark moment in the market, right? The people who are net new mystic holders that are buying right now are gonna be the right type of net new mystic holders that you want. And it reminds me a lot actually of December 2019. Coco listed a bunch of mystics for around 0.7, 0.75 ETH, you know, kind of near the bottom of the last cycle. I think ETH was $130, so 0.75 ETH is right. It's like around, he was selling mystics for around $100, right? Now, I think even selling them for 3 ETH, it was like $6,000 plus, right? Around there. So he was selling mystics for $100 each. And I think a lot of the people who picked them up there, you know, ended up being very important for the community and for what we did for that next cycle that happened 2020, 2021.
Yeah, and tell me a little bit more about maybe how you all are leveraging community, you know, alongside Coco Bear, onboarding these new loyal holders, I presume, that are holding Mystic Axies now. How are you utilizing, you know, all these people that are so fervent for Axie Infinity's success toward this new cycle? Did you learn anything versus, you know, back then you used to maybe do these community posts and, you know, we used to maybe do these January development updates, et cetera, et cetera. How has kind of the community as a whole matured, and how are you kind of leveraging this into the next bull market or into the next cycle, I guess?
Well, the community wants to help out in a lot of ways, right? They want to build tools. They want to, you know, they want to build things, right? So we have the builders program, right? You want to build an Axie game? You think you can do it better than us? All right. Well, there's a program for
I like that.
right? Like, you can apply for funding and you can build an Axie game, right? There are over 10 of those games that are built by the community. If you go to the Mavis Hub and check out the Greenlight section, right, those are all like community built games. And then, yeah, you want to make content, you want to, do videos, stuff like that, right? Like we then have if you press start voting now.
Oh, got it.
It's actually a little bit complicated. Yeah, so a lot of these are like.
Yeah, I've seen Keiki playing them. When are you gonna unban him from the Discord?
It's actually not up to me, right? Like I think community members who are modding the channel, they've decided to do it.
Shame.
And maybe I think maybe they could. I think maybe they could ban or lift it, but I'm not sure. It's really up to them. It's not up to me, right? Anyways, so yeah, builders program, right? Creator program. You want to be a creator? We'll help amplify, right? We have special tournaments that you get invited to, special content creation contests with tokenized and with ERC20 and NFT prizes. Right. So the creator program is also right if you want to help us spread the movement, spread the message.
Yeah, if you're gonna talk trash on Axie Infinity, why not just build a game there and try to prove that you can do it better, right?
Yeah. So it's always the community is gonna be like giving feedback, and you're like, nice. Do you want to do it? Like,
yeah.
Like when people give you advice or when they want to help, right? It's like, okay, that's a great idea for a program. Like you have feedback on how we should be doing marketing, right? Like, go show us how it's done. That's how Web3 works, right? Because you have real skin in the game, right? You have real stake in this project. So, it's like, if it's all up to us, if it's all up to the inventors of the protocol, then it's not going to work. I think that's really that's kind of like our philosophy is like unleash the strength of the community, right? Whether that be building things or spreading the word of mouth, right? It can't just be in the beginning. I felt like it was often my mouth, the mouth
right.
of the original, the early team members, right? But eventually, right, it's like we need to activate the community to help build and help spread market and grow. They also, obviously, the community is giving a lot of really awesome product feedback that's also actionable in a lot of cases. Also, sometimes obviously it's like, oh, that's a good idea, but you don't understand this about the development process, which is making that impossible for us to do. But yeah, so I obviously, right, it's like there's more incentive alignment, and that's part of the difference.
And it's wild to see how much more active people are in Web3 versus Web2. I mean, even one person in Web3 can translate to hundreds of thousands worth of people in the Web2 environment. Because most people are just free-to-play gamers. They don't really care too much about the game. They'll hop out in a couple hours. You get your retention metrics, and they're gone. I actually just got a thought. I remember back in 2021, you all had posted a bunch of these retention metrics on, the amount of people playing Axie Infinity and how long they were playing and why this was like record breaking at the time versus most Web 2 games. Do you have any updated metrics on how long people are actually playing Axie Infinity for nowadays? And, how many players are even playing in this ecosystem right now?
Yeah, I mean, so some of the public data shows that there are around 150,000 Ronin gamers. And obviously most of the Ronin gamers are also Axie Infinity players. And so you can see that from like the public data. So I would say around 150,000 monthly active Ronin gamers. My estimate is that there are around 250,000 blockchain gamers in total. I think you can look at on-chain activity. You can also look at what's happening on social media, YouTube, Twitch, to try and estimate these numbers. Obviously, bots make it so that you cannot only look at on-chain data in a vacuum as well. So yeah, I think we have around 50 to 60% of the market of actual gamers that care about Web3. And yeah, in terms of retention, the retention metrics are really good, but of course, it's like measuring, because there aren't that many new people coming into the space right now, because most people don't care about crypto again. The retention data is good, but it's like measuring retention of people who have been playing the game for a super long time, right? I think when you look at the traditional, so like net new players. I think, you know, it really depends on the game. Origins is pretty good, I would say. You know, Origins.
Is it better than V2?
So V2 retention when it launched was around like 40-20-10, D0, D7, D30. And it then like doubled, right? Once token prices started going up. I would say like Origins is like relatively near like traditional, you know, retention metrics right now. So it's like, okay, you know, maybe in a bull when some blockchain magic gets added, right? Then it's like those numbers would probably pump.
But like,
or if we invent something, or we invent some new mechanic, right? That changes the game again, right? It was like last time it was like, you know, this ability to earn a soft currency that's also tokenized using NFTs. You know, what would be the next thing, right? You know, part evolution is something that people have been really excited for and asking for.
I saw
right?
it, yeah.
So part evolution is one of those things that people were like, yo, we need this right now back in 2021, right? And there was like 100 reasons that from a dev point of view that we couldn't do it, or that we couldn't expedite the timeline. But that's something that, you know, would have definitely helped to extend the cycle back in 2021. That is now, you know, getting ready to be put in place.
Yeah, and I remember seeing that back then and being so hyped. Something
else
that
it was, you know, to be honest, it's like the same, right? It's like, oh, it would have been sick if we had part upgrades. You know, we were able to burn Axies. But it's still like, you know, it would have been hard because people still would have been burning Axies for.
You still would have Ponzi'd like out of there, like at the end of the day. The cycle would have done its thing. You still would have dumped. Like maybe it would have been a little bit better, but it is what it is. And like another big thing that I had was like, I know that back in the day, Sky Mavis was hiring a ridiculous amount of people. I mean, it was what, like 30, 40 people per month. And you guys were just hyper scaling like crazy because you were trying to meet the man. You still couldn't because, you know, I mean, so many people randomly came out of nowhere. But it's like you can't expect them to do everything. I think one thing that we all expected back in the day was like, it was what, LAN gameplay, which I think you all have some form of LAN gameplay live now. It's obviously different from what it was before, which I love the old one. I feel like that one low-key should be still the thing. But I know that that's a thing. I know that community, I believe, made Ray Lights, and there's a couple extra things. But like, you can't expect it all to just be developed in 2 days. These things take years. And these cycles, they last, what, like 4 to 6 months max, you know, through an actual hard bull cycle. So I don't know. I feel like some people were a little bit crazy on that. I'm super looking forward to this, though. I think part evolution is going to make things a lot more dynamic versus just buying Axies normally. And kind of getting into the topic of buying Axies, maybe you could tell us, because I haven't bought an Axie in years, right? Maybe you could tell us, what is the average person that's just getting into Axie Infinity? Like, what are they looking at to actually onboarding into getting their first Axie? Like, what kind of Axies should they be looking at? What kind of Axies are meta? Yeah.
I never recommend buying anything as your first step into an ecosystem.
Fair.
So, you know, if you want to try Axie, right, like, you know, go to the Mavis Hub, web portal, download Origins. That's kind of like the easiest flagship game to get into. Download Origins, try it out. See, you know, I think especially the Gala community, you guys may have heard different things that may be true, maybe not true.
Oh.
I think it's always important in life to make your own decision about things, right? So you can play for free, just as that button says. Click that, download Origins, give it a try. Check out the tutorial, play with the starter Axies, and see, you know, if that's kind of a game you want. I think Origins personally is a pretty good, you know, just a card game, irrespective of the Web 2 elements or Web 3 elements, and the data does suggest that. I think. So yeah, you know, see if you fall in love with the IP, and yeah, meet the community. After that, you know, if you wanted to go, you know, down the rabbit hole a little bit more, you'll know what to do a little bit because, you know, you'll understand how to play the game. Next would be to actually go to the NFT marketplace, look for 3 Axies that might be synergistic with each other, or even 1 Axie that might be synergistic with the starter Axie that you already have. That's another thing, is that, you know, back when Classy came into the ecosystem, you needed to buy like 3 Axies, right? And they were like $100+ each. Whereas now, you know, you can actually, right, you can play for free, or you can play with 1 NFT Axie and 2 free Axies. There's a lot more flexibility because we've done research into, you know, what would optimize onboarding and allow for more of a smooth activation funnel, right? Where it's like, it's like, don't ask anyone to marry you on the first date, right? But that's what
Yeah.
a lot of Web3 projects we're doing, right? It's like, hey, you like this? Okay, buy this thing for a lot of money. No, like that's not. Everyday gamers are not going to do that, right? Especially because they're so skeptical of Web3. So you need to show them that the IP is amazing, that there's a great community, that the game is fun and immersive, without Web3, and that Web3 just adds that turbo boost to get it to the next level, and then makes it like no game that they'd ever experienced before.
100%. That's it right there. Guys, you heard it here first. Axie Infinity saying that you got to make a bomb Web 2 game, and then you add the Web 3 to make it exceptional. It's kind of like when you look at YouTube intros and they're like, okay, you got to meet expectations. Now we exceed expectations. And that's kind of what Web 3 is trying to do. And tell me, because I remember, talking about back then, the whole play to earn narrative was huge. And I still know it is. Like, I looked at Google Trends. I still have to put play to earn NFT on my titles, or they just don't get views. It just is the kind of the environment we're still in. What is the pivot you are making? Because I saw the whole free Axies thing. I understand that now. I think something super cool that people have been asking for a very long time is kind of having like a scholarship portal where people would be able to just go, instead of going on a Discord or some other external platform, it'd be on the actual application. People would be able to get these Axies and be able to kind of play with them first, maybe play around with a bunch of different builds that community members are willing to just kind of rent out. I think that feature is something that I don't think that Axie Infinity does have. And I'll just throw as a suggestion, right?
Yeah. I think you can look
yeah.
at this from a couple of angles. One, I think it's great. I think something like that is a great feature to have. But if we focus on doing things that will improve the strength and sustainability of the economy, right? Like those are the things that will make the scholarship more viable and scalable again. Right. I think right now the root cause or the root issue to try and address is like to build a better type of economic model to improve and upgrade the game. The scholarship stuff, like what we saw last time, it'll happen even if there are a bunch of hoops to go through. I think, but I definitely think, and there are platforms like Loot Rush that have made it a lot easier than back in 2021. So that's like something that I'll plug. I have no investment in it or anything. I'm actually renting out some of my own Axies through Loot Rush right now.
Oh yeah, Loot Rush is awesome. Yeah.
So anyways, there are different solutions. I agree that it would be great to have it straight out of app.axie, through some sort of an official tool.
Yeah, because
it might
feels
be even like a way to monetize.
Exactly.
It might be a monetization tool or a way to balance, right? It's like you attach some fee or tax that burns or sends to the treasury, stuff from that.
Yeah, a game that's probably a terrible example here is Pegaxie. Used to be able to pay to rent out the Pegas and then use them for the game. Obviously, totally different game. But I liked the concept. I thought it was great. Obviously, that's not going to fix your economy, and it's a totally different issue, which I wouldn't have the first clue on how to fix. And I'm sure 99% of people don't know either. But it's a way to make the friction less. Because a lot of the time for me, it's been like Web3 is like, you grab a regular Web 2 game that's very popular. You grab CSGO, League of Legends, whatever you want, Dota, blah, blah, blah. You'll have boosting, and then you'll have a bunch of people, selling in-game assets on peer-to-peer marketplaces, on these third-party marketplaces that you need a VPN for, and you need to go ahead and get a Chinese social security to go ahead and sign up for this website. It's like, what is going on? Why can't I just have that on CSGO on the actual game itself? Why do I have to go through Valve too? And then I can actually cash that out? It's ridiculous. So the moment that people that are regular gamers realize, holy, I can actually cash this out, and it's not even that hard. You could do it today, by the way. Axie Infinity has probably the best decks on the entire Web3 gaming space. I don't think it's even close. Ronin absolutely killed it with their launch, and it's been something I've been looking at in terms of inspiration. Like, you look at any other Web3 gaming chain, it's so hard to do any transaction. I know Immutable X is working on it, but even them, like, you have to bridge out, and then it's a pain. You have to wait 24 hours or something ridiculous. They're working on a passport. I'm sure it's going to be better. But I mean, I think in terms of prospects, Axie Infinity has always killed it. And, you know, despite us roasting it all the time, and despite me talking all about how I sold my things back in 2021, it doesn't necessarily mean that the game is doomed to fail, or that the game, just because it had a huge rise and it had a fall because of natural occurring economics, doesn't mean that it's just here to kind of fade out. And I think that's kind of the narrative we have to spin into Web3 gaming, that there's still, what was it, 150,000 people on Ronin playing these games every month. It's ridiculous. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous to see, even to this day, that there's that many people playing these games. And that's a far cry of, what was it, 2 to 4 million at the peak monthly users, something crazy like that. I remember it was something crazy.
It was in the millions, right?
Yeah, like, it was in the millions.
Yeah. Right? It's like, we've onboarded, everyone, like, in their company mission or whatever, says that they're going to onboard millions.
You literally did it. Yeah.
We have already done it. And we've been there, right? It's like, we're the only ones that have gone and fought that boss, right? We've been to the boss. We fought it. It beat us up, right? Because you're fighting a boss for the first time. You're going to be dealing with problems that you didn't know, right? But now you face them, and then it's like, boom, now we're fighting our way back to that boss, but nobody else has even gotten one rep against it, right? I remember, like, I played WoW, right? So I remember, the key for raids was, how do you get a world first? It's like, you got to be the first one to get to the boss, and then you wipe like a ton of times. Your guild needs to store up enough gold so that you can pay for everybody's repair costs. Otherwise, nobody is going to want to go through that like wiping phase where you don't really know what to do. Anyway, it's the same thing, right? It's like we're raiding, and I mean, I think we're in a good position, right? We're well capitalized, thankfully, feeling very blessed. And I think we're iterating, right? You have to experiment. You have to rapidly experiment and figure out what's going to be the next thing. So you also can't just wait for the next cycle to come, because if you're not using this time to prepare and experiment, then you're not going to have stuff that catches fire when things start to shift.
So another thing that a lot of people have been talking about lately, and especially Kagi, the fucking dude, that guy, he keeps talking about pixels. And I know that they're coming out with this, like, is it a berry token? I don't know what it is. But he did say a lot about interoperability. Pixels has got, 40 different collaborations? Or is it more than that? Probably more than that. You'll talk about it more here. But tell me why you ended up working with Pixels and why that's such a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, Pixels, that was a really great addition to Ronin. I'm super excited about the team. I think that they have the right mindset because they're experimental. They're not married to any, particular playbook because they're just focused on figuring out what works and what doesn't work and running as many experiments as possible. They also have a real community. I've been in the Discord. I've talked to their players. I've, see that they have content creators that are, and people who are building tools. So, I see a lot of similarities between, the Pixels community and the earlier Ronin community. And my understanding is that they were also the largest game on Polygon, and that they are the largest game on Polygon by, on-chain metrics. I'll also say, when I talk, there are people in the Ronin community or the Axie community that play other games, right? And that was one of the things about Pixels, is that there are actually people in the Axie community that were playing Pixels, because they're not just, Ronin Maxis or Axie Maxis, they're also interested in the technology and interesting use cases. So there are actually people in our community who are playing Pixels, before I'd ever even heard about it. So that was also like a really great time. But I think they're around 70 to 100K monthly active addresses. I think 5,000 or so DAU. It's one of the things that is actually live, and people are playing around with it, and they're getting in their reps, right? They're getting in their experiments. Now they're not taking 6 years to build a game. So.
Yeah, they're finally done with that part. And tell me, because I know that they're going to Ronin. What was the decision to going to Ronin? Like, why go to Ronin? Why not just stay in Polygon?
Yeah, so I think Luke said it really well. So he said that basically we're the only ones who have experience, right, hitting massive scale in Web3 gaming, and that there's a lot to learn from us, and that basically, there's a lot to learn from us, and that he felt like the infrastructure was also proven, right? So,
And versus like Polygon that's not proven yet.
it's theoretical, right?
It's theoretical in nature. Okay. And, what gain other than, because I believe now you're talking about, they go into Ronin Network, you kind of help advise them and, grow their brand as a whole off of Ronin, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure there's collaborations like Genkai hopping onto Pixels. That seems like an easy one, or Axie's hopping on there. That's another obvious one. So now that Pixels is here, now that we've got Pixels, everybody love Pixels, right? We all love Pixels. They come out here, and I believe now they're making some kind of berry token. Are they making all these things because they're hopping onto Ronin now, and that wasn't possible before that? Or is it just something that you've advised them, and you're like, okay, we think it's a good idea, and let's go there?
No. Like they had this idea, in mind before speaking to us. I think it's always been part of their plan. I think it makes sense, right? It's like for a gaming ecosystem, just like you have gold and gems, right? You have like harder currency and softer currency. That will also apply to tokens. You'll have like harder kind of governance-esque tokens, and that usually have some backing with some sort of a fundamental value. And then you'll have like more soft in-game currency tokens, right? And I think that was one of the, that's one of the things to learn, right? Is from the last cycle is, to be careful, I think, holding like and speculating and buying the in-game, the kind of the more soft currency tokens.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of utility, right? At the end of the day, you can't guarantee prices or anything like that. It's just like you might as well have that there so you can better have a flow of an economy. It makes sense. And I think a lot of games are scared of doing that, honestly. I think a lot of games aren't going to make tokens because they're afraid that it doesn't go right and then it doesn't give a good perception of the game. But I feel like a lot of the time you have to stop looking at it as like some kind of share or something. You need to look at it as you can use it in the game and users get to dictate whatever ends up happening to it. It's just another angle of users being able to manipulate some kind of currency for their benefit, giving more power to those gamers and helping games like Pixel get another form of monetization, which I think is wonderful. I think that's great, and that's never something that people should shy away from. I think one that's really interesting for me has been, other than Pixels, is probably the Machines Arena, because I know the Machines Arena, I don't think has a token, and I haven't really heard much about what they're trying to do in the blockchain space. So maybe we can go into this one a little bit more too.
Yeah, Machines Arena. So basically, this was one of the first games that we announced back in April, and they're testing right now. And I guess their guidance on Web3 integration so far has been that they'll tokenize a lot of the skins.
Oh.
And that's going to be like their main initial approach, right? Is like tokenizing some of the skins. They've already given out some skins to early testers and who have been helping to give their feedback and try out the game. So that I think they're going to take it very kind of step by step, because adding in Web3 elements too early can also be harmful, right? So.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of governance with AXS. I'm not sure if Axie has gotten to that point yet where, people are actually doing governance votes, but I remember back then on the white paper, people had said, oh, at some point we're going to go ahead and give power to the users and let them do governance votes on whatever they wanted. I found it a little bit silly because I feel like the gaming company should just have the majority say on every decision, because at the end of the day, they kind of need to drive the project forward. But of course, community output and input is great. I don't think that's ever something bad for gaming companies in general. Maybe like, do you see governance being a thing of the future? Because I know Nouns had some kind of fork in their DAO, and that was like kind of mayhem. Do you think that like Web3 gaming is a little bit different than DeFi and the whole governance approach, and that most of it should just be focused on the gameplay and kind of the integrations with NFTs, or is it a little bit more than that?
So we have a staking system, and I think a lot of good tokens that have value in the future will also have staking, and because that coordinates the behavior of people not selling. And then, but you don't want people to just be passive owners of the network. You want them to be active owners of the network. And you want them to be able to shape certain things about the future of the product. And so, I think our thinking is that we don't want to have, this passive staking system forever. We want to add certain requirements to claiming of rewards. And, one of those things is, something, around like basically, voting on different things. Perhaps that's voting on things related to the treasury, right? The use of the treasury. But yeah, I think that, it's very experimental. We actually have kind of like a think tank or a research group that the community is spearheading, called the Governance Contributor Program, right? And we did the season 0, we did season 1, and they're figuring out, right? It's like, okay, how do we make this transition from passive to active staking? There's something in the white paper called the Axie score as well, right? Where basically the score that you have in the ecosystem could be something that adjusts your staking rewards. But yeah, I do think that there is something interesting about a game that's owned and in many ways operated by its player base. But I think that it will take a really long time for that vision to really work, because you also need like a strong group that's pushing forward the progress of a project. We see that too with the Ethereum Foundation, right? The Ethereum Foundation, they were more active, right, back in 2014, 2015, I think 2015, 2016. Vitalik was more active, right? And then over time, the community has been able to do a lot more. And it's like the more successful a project is, the more decentralized it gets, right? Because you have more diversity in the people who are actually making meaningful contributions. So.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's something that, initially you guys are going to have a lot of input, but over time, hopefully as the ecosystem grows, maybe some form of true decentralization will exist. But it's just not something that's going to come out anytime soon. I agree with that sentiment 100%. And honestly, I'm pretty impressed. I'm impressed that you guys are sticking around. I'm impressed that you guys have kind of low-key killed it still. Like, you're still probably the leader in Web3 gaming. There's no denying it in my eyes still. So it was a pleasure to have you here. It's a pleasure to finally have you here after, like 2 years at this point. Maybe I'll make some Axie Infinity content, and we'll do something more in the future.
Awesome, man. Well, yeah, it was good to hang out and chat, and yeah, happy to chat again in the future.
So that's going to be the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, like and subscribe, stay classy, and I'll see y'all in the next one.